One of the most common character tracks in the DLC was the tracks based off the real world, which range from absolute rubbish like Tokyo Blur, to some pretty good ones like the one at home, to weapons, to my favourite of the bunch. Of all the real world tracks, this one has my favourite set pieces, from launching out of a cannon, driving through a swimming pool, gliding over a footy pitch, driving through a market, drifting along the conveyor belts, and driving back through the market. Even the music is my favourite of the real world tracks. It sounds like something out of a Splatfest. I was really surprised that I liked this track as much as I did, and I'm certainly not complaining at that. So you can choose any items you want now. Oh, this is gonna be fun. The Star Cup as a whole is one of my favourite cups in the game, with 3/4 of the tracks being on the list somewhere, and this is the first of the bunch. I've said this before in a previous video, but it's bloody brilliant how this track straight up parallels a plane flight. You start off in the ticket area, you avoid boxes that are being loaded up, then you go inside of a plane before the takeoff, the actual flight itself, followed by the landing, and then go for the unloading. Really well done that. Can have a lot of fun turns and plenty of trick opportunities, and this is one fun track.
Oh, thank you! I got you absolute sod! You absolute sod!
What the hell were you two doing?
He absolutely trapped me!
Yeah, memories like that make you love a track. This track has a ton of memorable set pieces to get through. I would say tricking off the ramps with the dolphins is one of them, but I think that's actually slower than just normally driving through. Still cool though. This is followed up by numerous alternate routes where the pilots actually make great use of the underwater mechanics lower gravity and abusing the heck out of this eel's back. I think as a whole, this track is one of the best used in the underwater mechanic. Also, the stages are drop dead gorgeous. It's easily one of the best looking stages in the game. If the track is gonna have references to Galaxy, you bet I'm gonna love it. I remember back when this used to be my favourite track in the game, back when it was just a 32. As the name implies, you spend most of this track on the clouds, pretty standard stuff. But then you get launched into a thundercloud, which is one of my favourite parts of any track, having to avoid being electrocuted whilst constantly boosting. The music even changes to fit the area, and speaking of the music, that alone made this a track an immediate 10 out of 10. Super Mario Kart is about as first game syndrome as they can get, one reason being the track's mediocre design. Holy shit, did this one get a huge improvement. I know it's not just because of the better depth perception. There's now a lot of trick opportunities, there's a really fun anti-gravity section, and both that part plus this part has a ton of alternate routes, the latter of which having 2 routes can be very tricky to make, but it makes taking them very satisfying. Like I said in my Wave 6 video, best of the SNES tracks by a mile. Yeah, of course there was going to be a Rainbow Road on here at some point. Behind 8 Deluxe, we have my favourite selection of tracks in the series, and its Rainbow Road was one of my favourites because of the constant boost of speed you can get, and that also applied to this game, especially in 200cc. It's one of the best tracks in the game for it. However, it also got the biggest improvement from any track in Wii in my opinion, as the whole track now takes place in anti-gravity, which I'm always happy to see in a track. While it isn't my favourite Rainbow Road in the game, it's one I'll happily race on any time. Why does the Flower Cup in nearly every Mario Kart game have that one standout track? I love it when tracks have a ton of alternate routes, and this is one of the best in the series for it. Right out the gate, you can either drive along the bridge or trick off those. They can either go through the market or go on top of the strongest tents in the Mushroom Kingdom. That's a whole bleeding bike they're taking the weight of. Before another shortcut here, followed by an anti-gravity section that you'll probably never use. This part is totally silly escape. And then there's another shortcut here. It's one of the most replayable tracks in the game because of all the alternate routes. I continue my play with the Flower Cup having a standout track in nearly every Mario Kart game. I've noticed that the DLC seems to like adding my favourite track from previous games, and I'm certainly not complaining at that. The track starts out with you being launched like a pinball, and these turns work really well with the inside drifting, but you gotta be careful to avoid a pinball running you over. My favourite part has to be when you drop onto the main table though, with the pinballs flying everywhere and all the things bumping you all over the place. It can be bloody chaos, but all of that made it a very exciting track. Waluigi Pinball is a fan favourite for a damn good reason, and this is my favourite iteration of the track yet. And we go from my favourite track in DS to my favourite track in Wii. The reason why Cooper Cake was my favorite track from Wii was because I really liked the rushing water mechanic giving you a burst of speed, and the turns worked really well for the inside drifting, and this track still has that going for it. The underwater tunnel has also been changed to use the underwater and anti-gravity mechanics, and while I do prefer how the track was in the original with more rushing water whilst avoiding electricity, it's still fun to chain together speed boosts here. As a whole, I think I still prefer the original Wii version, but I think it's safe to say that Cooper Cake will always be one of my favorite tracks. Funnily enough, my favorite track from Double Dash also got represented here, but it's not my favorite track from Double Dash in this game, because it's amazing how better controls and newer mechanics can improve track. Double Dash's controls were a bit on the slippery side, which only got worse with the ice physics, god damn it. But that's not an issue with 8's smoother controls. I also love the improvements they made to the visuals, not just on a technical level, but I think switching it to a nighttime stage made the track look more visually interesting. The best new addition to this track is easily the new underwater routes, both of which are really fun to take, and with the rest of the turns also being fun to drift around. Right with an awesome theme, and it's easily the best retro track from Double Dash. Gotta say, Bowser, I love what you've done with your place, mate. Out of all of the Bowser Castle tracks, this is my favourite, and it knows how to kick off the track, with the gate creaking open and that guitar riff
at the start of the song.
And the rest of the track lives up to that opening. There's almost always something going on in this track. Fire bars to get in your way, a spike ball that can surprisingly be hard to dodge at times, the console obligatory Bowser statue punching the track creating shockwaves, to the rolling boulders on the home stretch. I don't know how Bowser got all of this, and it's probably safety violations galore, but I don't care, I love this track. You know what I said earlier that it's amazing how better controls and newer mechanics can improve tracks? Yeah, this track basically said, I don't need out like that, and it's still one of the best tracks in the game. They really went all out with the music theme here, implementing the musical instruments into the structure, drifting on and tricking off pianos and xylophones, and bouncing off the drums and the shockwaves these musical notes create here. That's probably my favourite part of this track. This has been one of my favourite tracks ever since I played it in Mario Kart 7, because even if not much new was added, it's still one of my favourite retro tracks. I brought in my first DLC ranking video that my first few races on this track had been an absolute blast, and I still have a blast on this track to this day. Like I brought up with Toad Harbour earlier, I love tracks that have a ton of alternate routes, and I think this is the most notable with Ninja Hideaway. Right out the gate you can either climb up the stairs or avoid being crushed, and then you have a gliding section with 2 different exits, followed by a lower and upper path here, and then finally you have another glider to the upper route which connects to one of the first alternate routes I mentioned. Because of that, I always have a blast with this track. Also the music is really freaking cool. So Wario's minted his health for all of his micro games and his Shy Guy abuse in the mines, and this is what he decided to get with his money. Whatever makes you happy, mate. Some of my favourite tracks in the series are section-based, because it allows for more creative track designs. Unlike most tracks which are 3 laps, this one is point A to point B. The first section is just kind of alright, although dropping out of a plane is kind of cool. The main highlights are from the second section onwards though. Gliding over rushing water, boosting across the side of a dam, go for this glider ramp even when I don't have a mushroom, good luck avoiding the trees here, and then in the final section you're playing the best version of the Winter Olympics you can with Mario characters. The variety of this track really makes it stand out. This is one of the most unique Rainbow Roads in the series, as this one's built into a space station. You even get to drive on one before being blasted off. The rainbow sections are also a blast, although some of which can be a nightmare, especially on 200cc, because if you misjudge it, even when you're braking, it's... However, in this part, it's fun to drop off the track and damn near essential if you want to win. Not to mention, the song that plays is my favourite Rainbow Road theme in the series. All of this made this my second favourite Rainbow Road in the game. When the Boost of Course Pass first got revealed, this was the track I wanted the most. Mario Kart 7's Rainbow Road is easily my favourite in the series. This is another section-based course from Mario Kart 7. The first section has the standard Rainbow Road we all know and love, with plenty of fun turns and ramps to trick off. But the highlights are from the second section onwards, where you drift around the rings of a frickin' planet before dropping onto the moon, tricking off craters and avoiding jumps. And then the final section has you going for a spinning tube and one of the best gliding sections in the series. A lot of that makes this my favourite track from the Booster Course Pass, because now I can actually play this track offline whenever I damn feel like it. Seriously, what the fuck, 7? Mario Kart Super Circuit was my introduction to the series, but like most games on the Game Boy Advance, it hasn't aged well. Honestly, the best part of this game now is how the tracks were improved in later games. And out of all the games in the series, I think the Super Circuit tracks got the best improvements, especially in the Vanilla Games DLC. I mean, it's almost like a new track now. The elevation of the track goes all over the place. There's a really awesome anti-gravity section at the end, and there's some really cool shortcuts added. Cheeseland was my favorite track in Super Circuit, but this remake completely blew it out of the water. My only minor complaint is that I'm not a fan of the weak grip from the cheese. Because of that, another track became my favorite retro track, but this is a track I'll happily race on any day of the week. This is my favorite remake of a Super Circuit track. Everything I just said about Cheeseland applies here as well, but the track is no longer slippery. Yeah, I can't really add anything else without repeating myself from Cheeseland. Sorry. There's some things that always bring me joy when they happen. England winning a football match, or Nonks getting killed in prison, and this track coming up. The vanilla DLC of this game introduced a lot of tracks from other series, including Zelda and Animal Crossing, but the series that got the best representation, in my opinion, was F-Zero because, well, let's just say the name Speed is in my username for the fun of it. Practically every way you can gain speed in this track is here. There's boost panels galore, spin gates you can spin off, plenty of ramps, and the whole track takes place in anti-gravity. Its high speeds made this an immediate favourite in the game as soon as I played it. But before the obvious number one, here's some honourable mentions. Swamp Ruins, one of the best tracks to ever appear in a Mushroom Cup. Wario Stadium, it's fun going off all of the boost panels on this track. Tick-Tock Clock, I like how the clock parts are incorporated into the structure of the track. Grumble Volcano, this track can get pretty exciting with the fire being shot everywhere and the track falling apart mid-race. Coconut Mall, they really went all out with the shopping centre theme. Mushroom Gorge, bouncing off mushrooms is fun, except when it sends you down a pit. London Loop and Athens Stash, two more great real-world tracks. Yoshi's Island, I love all of the references to the best game on the SNES. Daisy Cruiser, you get to drive on the top and through the ship, great fun. And finally, Squeaky Clean Sprint, took the concept of racing in a bathroom and went all out with it. Yeah, even after all of the DLC, this track is still my number one. Big Blue has been my favourite track in the game ever since I first played it. It's basically a combination of why I love so many of the previous tracks on this list. You got the high speeds from Muse City, you got the point A to B design of Mount Wario, and it's one of the joint best tracks in the game for using the anti-gravity throughout. The first section has you drifting around corners with plenty of boost panels and conveyor belts to keep the speed up. The second section has the rushing water mechanic I already praised in Cooper Cape. And the final section is more of what I loved in the first section. The speed you can get on this track, its variety, and not to mention its soundtrack, makes this always my first pick online. This has been Spit Inkling, and Big Blue is one of my favourite levels in gaming. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Take care.